Well, if there was one game worth getting up early for this morning, this was the game to do it for. New Zealand versus Ireland, and they have now finished their third test, and we finally have a winner for their decider match, and it goes to Ireland, which a lot of people weren't expecting. Reading the comments over the preview video and stuff, I backed Ireland to win by 3. They didn't. They won by quite a good margin, actually. They had a really good game in this one. Make sure, as always, you guys do drop down in the comments your thoughts on the game. But as someone supporting neither team, this was a great game to watch from an outside perspective. Absolutely loved it. So as we do in these match reports, we'll start off by talking about the first half and then finally the full-time result. And then we'll talk a bit after each half about what we were thinking of the game. So starting off with the first half, both teams immediately playing with super high intensity. It was so nice to see just absolute aggression from both sides straight from the off. Both teams obviously want to hit the ground running in this one, try and get that advantage straight from the off. The advantage actually eventually fell to Ireland, getting in a bit of a running theme what we've seen so far through this test series, getting a very early try within the first 5 minutes. Josh van der Fleer scoring the first try of the game. It all started from Sam Cane giving away a penalty for tackling off the ball on Josh van der Fleer, who later then got the try. Ireland moved up, got that driving maul going, and the driving maul today looked really, really solid from Ireland, smashing over the line. Josh van der Fleer did manage to get over. Johnny Sexton missed the first kick. It was a pretty tricky kick right from towards the touchline. So Ireland took a 5-0 lead 5 minutes into the game. Now, the New Zealand penalties in this game, there was a lot of them in this first half. New Zealand really struggled to adapt from what we saw in the last test going into this one. Those breakdown situations, too many penalties going on. They really didn't look like they'd adapted at all from the last game. It was certainly running throughout this first half that you begin to see a lot of those penalties come in. New Zealand did manage to get a couple of penalties of their own, though, in this first half. However, it was struggling to really convert it into anything. We had one towards the 10-minute marker. New Zealand managing to get a penalty for a high tackle. They did manage to kick all the way up, and then Ireland managed to steal the line out from New Zealand, really shut them down there. They had another one in the 9th minute for Aki being off feet and playing the ball, and then Geordie Barrett actually missed that penalty. So although they were getting penalties back, they weren't really beginning to make the most of them in this first half. As we move towards the end of the first quarter of this game, New Zealand began their second attack of the game. There was only 2 real main attacks in this first half, in that first 20 minutes, and both of them ended with Geordie Barrett kicking away the ball. It was a bit of a shame. They looked like they were doing pretty well going through the phases, but it just didn't really take a lot of pressure from that Irish defence to just result in a kick. And Ireland looked pretty good in terms of that defensive high ball. It wasn't really leading into anything. In the 17th minute, New Zealand had their 3rd line-out go wrong. We're only 20 minutes into this game, 3 line-outs going wrong. James Lowe did manage to collect this ball and kicked it all the way up the field. New Zealand managed to win their 4th line-out of the game, but Ireland absolutely swamped this driving maul and absolutely encapsulated and managed to win a scrum there, really putting them under big pressure. This did mean that Ireland had a scrum from the back of that driving maul. They began a bit of phase play, but New Zealand managing to just get that ball back, and Havili kicks the ball for a really nice 50-22, moves all the way up the field. They began that line out, went well, played a bit of phase play, and then there was a penalty against Sexton for not rolling away, and that one actually was converted by Geordie Barrett. So we're 22 minutes into this game. It's 5-3 to Ireland. Quite a low scoring first quarter there. New Zealand got back on the attack, going up towards the 25th minute, going through some actual phase play now, actually begin to hold onto the ball. They're looking good with it, really beginning to add pressure. They're moving closer and closer towards that Ireland try line. However, a huge turnover from Josh van der Fleer. Josh van der Fleer in this game, absolutely brilliant. This is one of the best games I've probably ever seen from him in just terms of his general running play. Only a minute later, we get the second try of the game coming in from Hugo Keenan. Ireland having a line out and managing to win an advantage in the maul, allowed Ireland to play a bit more freely. They managed to spread it wide. There was some lovely link play between Hansen, Keenan and Lowe. They were really using those back 3 as their own little pod in this game. So nice to see. Lowe managed to break the line, gets the little offload to Keenan, who managed to ride 3 tackles all the way going over to the try line there, and that one was successfully converted by Sexton. Really hard kick from the touchline. Now, James Lowe, I did mention in the preview video, I didn't think he'd been having the best test series so far, but had a much better game in this one, so he'll be really happy with his performance throughout this game. In the 30th minute, we get to see another penalty coming in from New Zealand in that breakdown situation. Tackling beyond the ball, this is something we saw in the second test quite a lot I am aware there's slightly different rules in New Zealand that have been used at like club level and stuff for some of the issues around the breakdown penalties. I've been seeing people drop down comments. I'm not fully versed on what's been going on there, the differences between Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere refereeing for breakdown penalties, but it seems that New Zealand are struggling to adapt to what those different rules are. There was another penalty conversion there from Sexton, another difficult one actually, 45 metres out. Really nice, takes Ireland to a 15-3 lead with only 10 minutes left of the first half. New Zealand take the next 5 minutes going for some nice attack, but the Irish defence just holding up really well. Ireland managed to steal another line out towards the end of this first half. Now they managed to make the most of it, making a 40-metre break, kicking the ball on. New Zealand all the way back in their 22. New Zealand tried to play out it, and then Laulala causes a knock on, which gives Ireland a huge advantage. Ireland managed to get into the scrum. They play 4 phases of attack. Aki makes a lovely little breakthrough, gets the offload to Henshaw, who goes over for another try for Ireland this first half. A really well-worked team try. I do feel Ireland play really tightly together from these set plays. I feel like they had so much room. They played a really tight attack. It did get shut down a little bit by New Zealand, but the offload to Henshaw was absolutely brilliant. Successfully converted by Sexton, taking Ireland to a 22 points to 3 lead. Absolutely incredible lead in this first half. Not one I was expecting at all. New Zealand did get a penalty for a jackal right in the 40th minute. They did get outside of their own 22. However, another line out, not straight, sees us go at halftime with that score. So Ireland dominant in terms of the scoreboard in that first half. And it's interesting reading my own notes back. I really felt watching it, Ireland had full control of that first half. But I have actually spoken quite a lot there about New Zealand. It's quite fun doing these sorts of match reports, going back over my own notes and seeing just how your observations compared to what I write down is slightly different. So in terms of notes written down here at halftime, there's a couple of key areas here. So I've got Ireland looking dominant, high energy, high confidence. The set piece is looking good. Line out dominance is clearly available. It is worth noting that Scott Barrett did drop out of the team just before this game was going to be kicking off, so they made a few replacements. So New Zealand did lose their 3 jumpers at the line out, had to switch to 2. I think that was potentially a bit of the advantage as to why Ireland were looking so good in that line out today. They weren't committing too many men at the breakdown, but just getting these turnovers when they needed to. Crucial turnovers coming in. They played it really well. Josh van der Fleer being immense. That's its own note. I just thought he had a brilliant first half. And then finally, very close set play attack. Just want to spread out a bit. That was the only negative. It's the only negative I had for Ireland in that first half. Just spread that line a bit more, allow the backs to get into the game a bit more. From a New Zealand standpoint, New Zealand looking a bit disjointed in defence. There was an awful lot of gaps, which Ireland were finding the ways to exploit them. Too many breakdown penalties, as we've mentioned throughout this so far. The line-outs all over the place, no real platform, couple of missed throws, couple of not straight throws, and a couple of steals in this first half alone. Really struggling for them. And then just trying too hard to score. Something that I didn't really hear get mentioned. I just felt like they were really trying to push that kicking game a little bit too much, where they didn't really have anything on. They had the advantage. They were just trying these too elaborate things rather than just going through the phases and allowing them to get closer to that line. An interesting stat from that first half, I thought. New Zealand had 55% possession in the first half. And when I was watching it, I really felt like it was probably 70-30 to Ireland. So it really shows possession doesn't equal points necessarily in that first half. Ireland managing to do well with only 45% possession. And Ireland only had 5 visits to the New Zealand 22 in that first half, and yet got 3 tries. So turning those visits to the 22 into tries, what you want to see is, if you're an international coach, that's what you want to see your team doing. And absolutely brilliant from Ireland. On to the second half then, and we didn't have to wait very long for the first try of this one. The first try coming in the 3rd minute of the second half from Ardie Savea. New Zealand doing exactly what I wanted to see them do, just holding onto the ball, going through the phase play, getting those handling situations cut down an awful lot now. 23 phases of play this one took. The Ireland defence did hold up pretty well. There's a lot of advantages given away along the way, but eventually Ardie Savea goes over for a really nice try, having to bend backwards over himself to get the try. Did get it over and successfully converted by Geordie Barrett. Brings them back to 22-10 very early into the second half, which was nice to see. There was a bit of back and two in terms of penalties and moving up the field. No one really gaining the advantage until that 50-minute mark, where we see Andrew Porter getting a yellow card. Now, in all honesty, the refereeing throughout this game I thought was really good. I know someone will probably disagree with me in the comments. There's always someone who says the referee was a cheat. But I thought the refereeing from Wayne Barnes this game was really good. I thought he was really equal on both sides. The same penalties. He was really consistent. I thought it was good. This was maybe the only area that I thought was potentially a bit contentious. The Porter yellow card, head-on-head tackle with Brodie Retallick. Stood up in the tackle, collision with the head, and it was deemed a yellow card in this one. I feel New Zealand supporters will feel a bit hard done by with this one. We saw red cards. We've seen red cards a lot in the last couple of years for head-on-head collisions. This one was deemed a yellow card due to it being an absorbing tackle rather than an offensive tackle, which is an interesting line, something I'm not particularly versed on in terms of international law. I really thought a head-on-head collision where the player is standing, even if you're not necessarily coming from deep and on the offensive, I feel like I've seen those go for red cards before. I think that could be a tough one. It was certainly going to be at least a yellow, but I potentially feel that could have been a red card there. So it's interesting to see how that could be a bit of a turning point in this game. Only 2 minutes later, another try coming in for New Zealand. Akira Ioane getting his first try in an All Blacks jersey. So nice to see. Powering through 3 tackles himself. There wasn't really a lot to talk about in terms of the build-up to this. It's just Akira Ioane being him, managing to get through 3 really nice tackles. A nice side set from Keenan right at the end, and getting over from the back of a ruck there, and it was successfully converted by Barrett. So we've seen this point deficit cut down immensely. 14 points in 12 minutes for New Zealand, brings them back. Ireland 22, New Zealand 17. At this point, it felt like a lot of momentum was going behind New Zealand. They certainly were moving up the field. They were scoring points. They were doing much better than they were doing in the first half. At this point, it came out that Tuanga and Brodie Retallick had both failed their HIAs from earlier in the game. So, again, I felt like that could have been a bit of a situation for their line-out. Again, losing Retallick as well as Scott Barrett before the game. I didn't feel it was going to help their line-out in any way. Ireland decided they needed to try and get a couple of points back here. Ireland got a penalty. Sam Cane not rolling away in the tackle was a really nice conversion from Sexton in the 55th minute just to try and extend that lead out. You've just got to keep ticking away. You can't let New Zealand get back in. Ireland know this one. They had another opportunity only 3 minutes later. Ty Burn in the jackal penalty. Ty Burn playing amazing in this game as well. Sexton went for the post again, but hit the crossbar from 50 metres out. Just about as close as you can possibly get. Didn't manage to extend that lead anymore. And then New Zealand came absolutely firing back from it. Will Jordan getting a try in the 60th minute. An unbelievable one-man try. They were going through a bit of phase play. There was a lovely inside pass from Ardie Savea, just taking all the eyes of the Irish defence, knowing you've got to tackle Ardie Savea. We see Will Jordan carve through the line and just run. I don't even know how far it must have been. A good 60, 70 metres, single man running round the outside of 3 defenders, getting in the corner. Really nice run. That conversion was missed by Geordie Barrett. There was a few complaints about that one. It looked to me like he missed it. The ball pretty much went over the actual post from curling in from the outside. I think I would also call that as a missed one. I think that was fair. But it does mean at the 60th minute marker, New Zealand pull back within 3 points. Ireland managed to knock back, though, with a try coming in from Rob Herring. This all started with an Ireland back on the huge offensive now. They knew they had to try and regain a bit of momentum in this game. There was an Irish penalty in the 64th minute. Savea picking the ball up when the ball wasn't out from the back of the ruck. I thought it was tight, to be fair. I feel he felt hard done by that one. I think by letter of the law, probably correct, but I would absolutely understood why he went for that one. I thought potentially it was right on the edge of being out. Ireland kicked to the corner, big decision here. Rob Herring then at the back of this driving maul, driving forward. The Irish driving maul looked good all day long. Broke away quite early, big call, but did manage to ride through another 3 tackles there. Got himself over, and Johnny Sexton converts that one as well, taking Ireland 32 points to 22 with only about 10-15 minutes left, getting really, really tight again. Will Jordan breaks the line now. It doesn't stop. It's full intensity all day long. Will Jordan breaks the line, takes it back up to the Ireland 22. The Irish defence managing to hold out, but there was a penalty given away for an offside. New Zealand opt for the scrum out of everything to go for it. Could have taken the 3, closed that gap, could have gone for the corner, tried to get their own driving maul. They opt for the scrum. The scrum been working well for them all day. Not been winning the scrums dominantly, but been able to hold a lot of Irish defenders there. Ireland defend the scrum absolutely brilliantly. Actually looked like they were beginning to push that New Zealand scrum back. Ireland defending, and eventually New Zealand give away another silly penalty in the breakdown, a neck roll. And Ireland survive. They do kick up the field, but the line out not straight from Ireland. The line-out was probably the first one gone wrong. I actually made a note of that. It was the first Irish line-out that didn't go correctly. And we are 72 minutes into the game. That's quite an incredible stat in terms of a set-piece play. The next 5 minutes is just all New Zealand on the offensive. Some of the Irish defenders are absolutely brilliant in this game. Tyburn got a huge turnover on their own 5 metre line in terms of a jackal penalty, which was absolutely brilliant. New Zealand went back on the offensive. They got right back up to that 5 metre line. Now, they did get a penalty here in the 74th minute, and this was a really big call here. They got the penalty in the 74th minute, and Fakatava had come on at this point and opted to go for the tap and go, and I think this was the wrong move. I know they wanted to score quickly, but that Irish defence was really solid. They looked good. I would have gone for the scrum here, just sucked in some of those defenders and tried to play out wide again. I think that was potentially the wrong call for them to go for. Tyburn, again, only a minute later, in terms of in a ruck, saw that Fakatava wasn't watching the defender, absolutely smashes the counter ruck, knocking him over, and they managed to survive that one again. The Irish defence on their own try line looking really, really good in this game. Ireland were the ones going to seal out this game. Joey Carberry with a lovely interception runs it back in to the New Zealand half, and Ireland kick the ball all the way down to the New Zealand try line. Richu Mo'unga trying to somehow work his way back up the field, can't make it, tackled over his own try line. It was the dropout from behind their own try line, and Ireland just held them there, trying to keep them back in their own 22, not really letting them get out. Ireland did get on the offensive. They actually looked like they were managing to make ground. There was a nice jackal penalty coming in from New Zealand. Again, New Zealand going for the tap and go. You know, this was in the 79th minute. You're not going to be scoring 2 tries at this point now. Opt for the line out for me there. Try and move your way up the field. Didn't lean to anything and eventually led to a knock on, which went to the Irish scrum. And of course, we just see the ball kicked out from that point. So we lead into the full-time whistle with Ireland winning this game 32 points to 22. And in all honesty, I feel like Ireland absolutely deserved it. Thought they played a really, really good game. Really interesting in terms of some of the stats of this game, considering how much I really felt Ireland were in charge for a good portion of that game. New Zealand took over the second half. Some of the stats for this game really surprising to me. Number of turnovers. New Zealand actually got more turnovers, 16 to 8, which was really surprising. It was just Ireland getting those turnovers at much more crucial times, apparently. Penalties conceded. New Zealand was 8, Ireland was 9. So again, Ireland just making the most of getting those penalties. The number of lineouts, New Zealand had 12 and Ireland had 7. However, number of lineouts stolen, New Zealand 0, Ireland 2. Now that should really try and display that Ireland were in charge. That isn't really taken into account how many of these New Zealand lineouts also just went wrong from missed throws or not getting it to the correct man. But yeah, I thought Ireland played really, really well in this game. In terms of my notes at the end of the game, I said New Zealand much better in that second half, and they absolutely were. Better in possession, more phases, handling errors cut down really well. But the breakdown penalties were still there, which was really just allowing Ireland to keep themselves in this game. In terms of an Ireland team, absolutely brilliant. Tyburn, Josh van der Fleer, Peter O'Mahony, all 3 of them absolutely immense. We saw at the end of the game, Peter O'Mahony just sobbing, crying his eyes out. He was absolutely overjoyed with this. Absolute passion. They were so happy to see this result from here. One note that I didn't note down here that I didn't hear any of the commentators talk about was Jameson Gibson Park in this game. In this second half, they obviously began to see Ardie Savea as this massive ball-carrying threat. So what we began to see at the back of rucks and scrums was Jameson Gibson Park actually became an Ardie Savea heat-seeking missile, which I thought was such an interesting tactic. Rather than letting them try and play the ball out, every single time it was at the back of the scrum or the back of a ruck, Jameson Gibson Park ignored the scrum half and went for the feet of Ardie Savea, not letting him get the speed up and then allowing one of the bigger lads like Josh van der Fleer to actually hit him head on. It really shut down the ball carrying from someone like Ardie Savea. I thought the game was really well managed from Ireland. Throughout the whole game, they had that slip up between probably 40 and 60 minute where New Zealand began to get back into the game, but I think that was a lot more New Zealand on the aggression rather than Ireland beginning to slip away. I thought that was New Zealand playing at the top of their game, really getting back into this game. Well done to New Zealand for managing to get that scoreline back so close after a first half that really didn't go their way. But congratulations to Ireland on winning the first test series of the videos we'll be covering today. If you've enjoyed this one today, guys, make sure to drop this video a like. And if you enjoy the content on the channel, feel free to subscribe. It's perfectly free. Just click that red button. It does really help the channel out. But of course, make sure you do drop down in the comments your thoughts on the game, thoughts on the final score. I really enjoy reading through the comments. I hope you've all enjoyed today, guys. I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.